This is the kill count, where I count every kill and every death in the games I play. Today, I'm playing Alan Wake 2, developed by Remedy Entertainment and released in 2023, 13 years after the release of the first game. We follow FBI agent Saga Anderson as she travels to Bright Falls to investigate ritualistic murders committed by the Cult of the Tree. Coinciding with Saga's story is Alan Wake's, as he continues to find a way out of the dark place. This sequel plays much differently than Wake's previous titles, moving from action thriller into full-on survival horror. The result is a game that plays similar to the Resident Evil remakes, while being one of the most visually stunning and fascinating stories in the genre. With a shift into survival horror, that means resources are scarce. Does that mean the kills will be as well?
This will put a smile back on your face, my dear.
Sorry?
I start by selecting normal difficulty, and the game opens up with Alan Wake warning that we're entering a horror story. We transition into nighttime at our favorite supernatural lake that produces a naked-ass man wriggling out of the water, imitating Frank Reynolds covered in hand sanitizer. I take control of him as he stumbles through the hyper-creepy forest of the Pacific Northwest. While researching the region, Remedy used photogrammetry to place real-world trees into the game, so the forest looked and felt like something you'd see in the wilderness of Washington. The forest felt real and terrifying while navigating it in the darkness. It's a beautiful setting I loved exploring, despite feeling on edge the entire time. Someone flashes the flasher, blinding him with light, but as soon as they see he's hanging dong, they dip out before we're attacked by our first jump scare. He continues stumbling through the forest, and after about 2.5 minutes of that, he's greeted by a group of deer furries that want to check him for ticks. They forcefully pull him onto a nearby picnic table, and while he mutters incoherently to himself, they introduce themselves as the Cult of the Tree, and show him what 6 inches actually looks like for the first kill of the game. They yank his heart out of his chest, and before it can get Khaleesi'd, they're interrupted by the same couple that saw him earlier, who wastes 0 time running away. The cult makes chase as we get a nice long look at some dick, which is followed by one of the most epic title cards I've seen in any video game, so I'd say it's a fair trade. We cut to Saga Anderson driving while she chats with her daughter Logan on the phone. She apologizes for working so much, but Logan is cool with it because she gets to chill at home and watch Night Springs with her dad David. After the call ends, we peer into the vehicle, and right away the game drives home how meta this story is going to get, as Agent Alex Casey is there as Saga's partner. Wake's claim to fame are the Alex Casey novels, the hard-boiled detective based in New York City that are obvious callbacks to Remedy's previous work on Max Payne. On top of that, Casey is modeled after creative director and writer Sam Lake, and voiced by the late, great James McCaffrey, who were both used as the model and voice for Max Payne respectively. They arrive at the crime scene and start chapter 1, as Casey tells Saga she should take point on this investigation. They locate Deputy Mulligan, who escorts them to the crime scene where fellow Deputy Thornton is waiting. On the way there, the game introduces us to the Mind Place mechanic. I thoroughly enjoyed feeling like a little detective putting pieces together, and even though I understand the complaints that it broke up the pacing, sometimes I felt that was necessary, because this game is so tense a lot of the times that the Mind Place was a welcome reprieve. Thornton escorts the feds to the body where we learn the man is former FBI agent Robert Nightingale, who Casey knew back before he was removed from the bureau. Saga goes into her mind place to profile Nightingale, which is a supernatural ability she has to parse together details and determine the correct outcome of events, with this instance showing her that Nightingale came from Cauldron Lake and his murder was planned out. Soon after, we encounter the first manuscript page that shows evidence of edits being made, but more importantly, the page contains details about Saga and Casey. While that's creepy as fuck, Saga is laser focused on the murder and asks the deputies to get Nightingale's naked ass to the morgue, and she'll be there later to examine the body. On their drive back to town, Saga talks with Casey about the manuscript, thinking the killers are leaving traces meant to speak directly with the detectives. Nothing gets Saga going quite like a good mystery, and this case has her giddy as hell. Before going to the morgue, we drop by Oh Dear Diner, where Sheriff Tim Breaker awaits, cousin of previous Sheriff Sarah Breaker, who helped Alan out 13 years ago and left Bright Falls to join the feds. Breaker is played by Sean Ashmore, who many will recognize as Iceman from X-Men. He worked with Remedy previously on their first game post-Alan Wake, playing protagonist Jack Joyce in Quantum Break. He tells Saga the 2 witnesses are inside, and Casey stays out to share a cup of coffee with Breaker, while Saga heads into the diner to talk to Tammy and Ed Booker. She discovers Tammy is a true crime novelist who trespassed in order to research Alan Wake's disappearance. Saga profiles Tammy hard and demands she turn over any evidence she stole from the crime scene, and obtains a culty necklace. Her little victory is soon soured when resident loony Rose Marigold says what up to Saga like they're old pals. She acts surprised to see her around town considering her daughter drowned, which throws Saga off initially, until she tells Rose she's mistaking her for someone else. Saga, Casey, and Breaker walk to the morgue and begin examining Nightingale. His body shows signs of water submersion, and like a street artist's ex-girlfriend, someone graffitied his heart. Hidden inside his torso is another manuscript page, providing details on the soon-to-be event. Breaker claims they found similar pages, and as soon as he's about to hand it over to Saga, he suddenly disappears as a strange face flashes on screen. Everyone is standing around wondering how Iceman got Nightcrawler powers, which makes it the perfect moment for Nightingale to spring back to life and attack everyone in the room. Despite being stunned, Saga is able to recall the text from the page saying she won't be seen if she stays in the light. Thinking that's a little counterintuitive, she does it anyway, and lo and behold, she's hidden. During the attack, Nightingale kills 2 deputies, and as soon as Saga finds her gun and blasts him with a couple headshots, he presses that standby button and leaves the area. Now that the morgue has quieted down, Saga regroups with Casey, and they look over the manuscript page detailing Saga's pursuit of Nightingale at Cauldron Lake. That becomes their next destination, and on the way out, they inform deputies Thornton and Mulligan what just transpired, and Casey calls in to request backup agents. On the drive to the lake, Casey explains to Saga that his sharing the same name as Wake's books was a minor annoyance that became a much bigger one once a cult arose in New York City 3 years after Wake's disappearance. They committed murders similar to ones detailed in Wake's novels to try to bring the writer back. He took this case because he thought they'd be connected with the New York murders. After arriving at the lake trail, we encounter Imo Koskela and a man that works at the Federal Bureau of Control, which is significant for those that have played Control. He claims he's making repairs to a monitoring station that supposedly keeps records of volcanic gas levels.
Right.
Soon after, the agents get to the crime scene and note the culty-looking symbol that matches the necklace Tammy had on her. Saga spots some tracks and follows them, telling Casey to stay behind and continue looking for clues. Saga drops into her mind place to profile Nightingale a little bit more and learns he passed through a threshold and is no longer in this world. But luckily for her, the nearby save point tells her exactly how to pass through too. She simply needs to find his heart and shove it through a hole somewhere. Easy peasy, so why not check out the seemingly abandoned general store first? Nearly 2.5 hours into the game, and I gained my first personal kill. He even flexes his pecs on me post-death to celebrate the milestone. Saga locates the tainted heart in the back room along with a shotgun, but neglects to use it on the 2 taken we encounter a few minutes later. Down the path a ways is a witch sign that seems like the perfect place to sacrifice this heart at. The tree turns red and Saga enters the Overlap, an area where the dark place influences reality and forces Saga into a loop she must navigate 3 times, which obeys the law of 3 established in Control. Within the Overlap, Saga faces off against Nightingale, who has clearly become a Taken. The fight has 3 phases, with the first one bringing my first 2 deaths of the game. Nightingale himself earned one, and the Dark Presence consumed Saga after phase 1 was over and I was too dumb to leave the area. The second phase has us following narrow nature trails, re-upping on supplies, and dodging Nightingale's surprise attacks. It ends with the final confrontation, where I finish the former FBI agent off for good for my first boss kill of the game. With the fight over, Saga and Wake come face to face, but are yet so far away from one another. Communication is difficult and short-lived when Saga is ejected from the Overlap and onto the shore of Cauldron Lake. Alongside her is Alan Wake, who yells about Scratch and the Dark Presence changing his story. As if he wasn't discombobulated enough, Saga informs him he's been missing for 13 years. Casey approaches them, telling Saga he's been trying to radio her, and notices the once missing author standing there next to her. Saga requests Casey drive him into town, while she stays back to look for additional evidence now that Nightingale's death has lessened the flooding in the area. As we part ways, we can hilariously hear Wake talk to Casey about his remarkably similar appearance to the character in his novels. As usual, I stick to the main story, but I do take some time to explore a little bit here, and I find a couple dead deer on my way through the trail. I encounter what appears to be the deer killers and add a couple taken wolves to the count, who are intimidating as fuck when you first spot them stalking the dark forest. I find myself going off the beaten path that leads to my third death death, which turned out to be a blessing since I was low on resources. I show a couple Taken what my 2 weapons can accomplish and discover a remote cabin that shows us that the FBC has been setting up nursery rhymes around the area to research how fiction can change reality, which apparently brings the big bad wolf to life for a proper killing, along with a little piggy. On the walk back to the car, the FBC monitoring unit's alarm is blaring, and after some snooping around, Saga finds some notes declaring an AWE is in progress. She radios Casey to ask if he knows what the FBC does. All he's aware of is that they show up when weird shit goes down and everything they do is classified. They arrive at the field office based inside a lodge outside of town, which is an exact replica of Saga's mind place. Wake's questioning confirms Nightingale was taken by the Dark Presence 13 years ago, and when they ask about the manuscript titled Return, he can't exactly recall, saying the Dark Place makes it difficult to remember things. He peers into the janitor's closet, which triggers his memory, and we cut to Wake inside a dressing room. Wake interacts with the TV inside and, much to his bewilderment, finds himself on a talk show called In Between with Mr. Door. He's there apparently promoting his new book Initiation, but Wake claims he didn't write that schlock.
Maybe it was written by your evil double.
Door breaks down the plot, providing a little foreshadowing, and thanks Wake for the strangest interview he's ever had, and gives him the old Irish goodbye. Wake finds himself in an empty studio now, and follows the light where a dressing room contains a book from the previous director of the FBC, Casper Darling, who is played by Alan Wake's voice actor Matthew Peretta. Both him and Ilka Vili return to play the titular character and absolutely knock it out of the park. Soon after, Wake finds himself trapped with a rushing presence coming his way, but right as it connects, he wakes up within his writer's room, which is his version of the mind place. The plot board nearby is used to write and rewrite the story as necessary, starting with the talk show. This time around, Wake isn't the only guest on the show. It also features the actor portraying Alex Casey in an adaptation of Wake's books. Not long after this second interview, the studio empties out again, but this time he's able to escape the rushing presence. Following the sound of some beautiful humming, Wake meets Ati the janitor, a character introduced in Control that proves to be a powerful supernatural entity shrouded in mystery. Thankfully, he's a friendly one. He never calls Alan by the name we know him as, instead referring to him as Tom. He lets us know there's a lamp in the basement and hands over a key so Wake can obtain it. The angel lamp is a unique item that allows Wake to utilize certain light sources to change the environment around him. Using that, he leaves the studio and emerges onto the dirty, graffiti-covered streets of New York City. He picks up a ringing phone with a familiar voice on the other end warning him of the shadows and telling him to get to Caldera Street Station. He picks up the subway pass conveniently left on the ground, and we set out to find the station. While it's much different than the Pacific Northwest, the dirty and grimy New York here is equally as awesome. It gives a dreamlike quality to the game that the Dark Place has always been described as. Whether I'm playing as Saga or Alan, both the environments they operate in are so well thought out and incredibly detailed. The amount of work Remedy put into the level design is phenomenal and proves that they are a top-level developer in the gaming industry. As Wake treks down an alleyway, he's jumped by his own character. Alex Casey demands answers from him, inquiring if he's the murder cult's leader, but when a light goes out down the alley, Casey leaves to investigate and becomes a victim himself. His death is Wake's benefit, as we're now armed with a trusty flashlight and handgun, just in time to take down our first Taken in the Big Apple. While the forest of the Pacific Northwest is creepy, the New York that Alan resides in is even worse due to the constant shadows that lurk throughout. They continually shout his name, and it's difficult to determine which ones will attack. Using the lamp, Wake makes the subway station appear, and underground he meets Tim Breaker for the first time. He tells Wake they've met before, and that he's here trying to map the place and figure out who Warland Door is. Throughout Wake's levels, there are echoes left around that provide details of Casey's investigation into the murder cult, but the only one getting murdered here is me! When I reload, the scene plays out differently, so I'm able to escape without a kill or another death, so I can enter Caldera Street Station and rewrite another scene. Casey's echo informs Wake that an FBI agent beat him to the scene, which becomes the story thread he runs with in order to open the subway tunnels for further exploration, so we can obtain another 2 plot elements to rewrite the story. 2 Taken have their lives taken by Wake, and in between those kills, Wake runs into Breaker again. He continues to focus on Warland Door and claims he's the reason he's here. Further along the tunnels, Wake tip-taps on his typewriter to update the derailed train scene with the murder cult plot element, which changes the environment into something much creepier. I take note of the empty gas cans outside the train and shoot the one taken that has the nerve to show its face. Keeping those gas cans in mind, an echo of Alex Casey details a mass murder committed by the Cult of the Word. That provides yet another plot element that allows us to change the scene again, this time for the worse, as we enter the derailed train to find 25 bodies burnt to a crisp by the cult. I counted 13 in the first train car and 12 in the second, and another 2 taken a couple minutes later. Finally, I reached the end of the line and listened to Casey explain the FBI agent saw something that made him run, which has Wake reveal the ritual site by doing some on-the-fly editing. Wake attempts some running of his own, but I reload and eliminate another 2 enemies, before heading to a collapsed tunnel and adding the summoning ritual plot element. This opens the tunnel up, but also brings forth the Dark Presence, who chases after us. It can't enter safe havens, however, and ends the chase there. But we still need to go back to the ritual area, so we head right back, and this time run the opposite direction, and escape the presence by cramming Wake into an itty-bitty tunnel. On the other side lies the body of Agent Nightingale, and his heart, but when Wake reaches for his heart, it just disappears, and instead Saga appears faintly. He remarks on how he feels closer to home. That's probably because his old apartment building pops in on the streets above. They really need to patch that. Can't be having those pop-in issues worse than Pokemon. We head back up to the street and answer the ringing payphone again. This time, the voice asks if Alan was positive Alice got out. He's adamant she did, and the voice warns that the dark place is a tricksy little place. He heads into Parliament Tower and rides the elevator right into a jump scare. Signs and echoes of Alice are all over the place, with some photos on their bed showing Scratch. Wake watches a live-action Alice being portrayed by Christina Cole. The original character was voiced by Brett Madden, who sadly passed away in 2020. Cole does a fantastic job portraying a presumed widow coming to terms with life without her husband. She sheds details on their life and how her passion for photography was put on the back burner since it didn't provide an income and Alan's novels did. He got her work when he could, but it wasn't the kind she wanted to do. Then Alan experienced writer's block, and that initiated the events of the first game. She's blamed for his disappearance and experiences noises in the night that make it seem as if Alan is still there. So she set cameras up around the apartment to capture what is haunting her, which began her next project titled The Dark Place. Being a supportive husband, Wake presses X to examine Alice's project, but instead he's placed in his writer's room with a dead version of himself. Not knowing for sure if it's real, he examines the manuscript page on the desk, seeing the novel titled Return and its author jumping him to end the chapter. We bounce back to the lodge with Saga and Casey recapping Wake's time in the Dark Place. He tells the feds if he can get his hands on the clicker, he can stop Scratch and return things to normal. After a sip of some fresh bean water, they inquire as to why they're a part of his story, and Wake explains he saw Saga in the Dark Place who helped him escape, and since she played a role in that, Scratch is going to include her in his story and twist it in order to hurt her. Questioning moves on to the Cult of the Tree, and somehow Wake knows they have the clicker, but isn't sure how, just believes they're working for Scratch. Saga dips into her mind place to profile the confused author and find out he's hiding a manuscript page on him. She demands he hand that over, and reading it learns a cultist in the nearby town of Watery has the clicker. At this point, we can switch between Saga and Alan and play their stories in whatever order we like. I elect to continue as Saga for now, who is off to Watery in search of the clicker. On the drive over, she talks with Casey over the phone, who wonders if splitting up is a good idea, and since Saga seems to not recognize they are in a horror story yet, thinks it's okay. She gets to Watery while telling Casey the faster they gather more manuscript pages, the faster they'll solve the case, since they seem to provide details they don't know about yet. Saga leaves her vehicle and enters the closest building to find Ahti there singing beautifully and entrancing every person in the room. They even shush Saga when she tries to chat with them.
Do you know where?
Right outside is a bus driver for the Valhalla nursing home who, like Rose, knows Saga and informs her that her grandfather and granduncle didn't come in on the bus and remain at the oldies home. Up the road, she finds Emo and his brother Yako, who are just as friendly to her as if they've known her for a long time. Turns out, she owns a trailer in their trailer park, but they don't have an extra set of keys on them and instead left them at their amusement park Coffee World. Unfortunately, the road behind them is flooded, so the only way there is through the nature trail directly to the right that contains a couple bad eggs looking to ruin our hike. It's made better when a new silent weapon is found and tested out on another Taken. Emo claims someone would be at the park to hand Saga her key to the trailer, but it's abandoned as shit, minus the 7 Taken that are wandering the place enjoying the rides without any lines. She finds the keys hidden within a safe in the gift shop and exits the park. Down the street is the trailer park that Saga has simultaneously never been to, yet owns a trailer in. Inside the gate are my 2 favorite old kooks, Tor and Odin Anderson, who Saga doesn't recognize as her grandfather and granduncle. They point her towards her trailer, and upon entering, it reeks of booze and bad decisions. Inside lies a mountain of evidence indicating Saga has lived in Watery for years, with past due bills, an FBI resignation letter, a photo of her relatives big chillin' with a cultist, and finally the atom bomb of them all, a newspaper showing Logan did in fact drown. I won't be counting this as a kill, as there's still a lot of doubt as to what's real and what isn't. Regardless of that, Saga begins freaking out and immediately tries calling Logan to no avail. She follows up by calling her husband David, but it goes straight to voicemail. In the middle of her panicked message, she spots a Deputy Mulligan all furry up at the fence. She follows him to a biker's workshop that contains what appears to be the headquarters for the Cult of the Tree. She finds evidence that they are in possession of an OOP, which control players know stands for an object of power. Saga climbs down into the basement without a second thought, despite the creepy ass chanting coming from within. Two cultists sidestep behind the curtains and out of existence to allow Saga access to the clicker. Psych! Right after it disappears, a page is given as a consolation prize that tells Saga an overlap is nearby and to utilize the parade float outside to find a way in. Before doing that, Saga enters her mind place to profile the two deputies and confirms they've been consumed by the dark presence for another 2 kills. Before climbing up, Saga hears footsteps up above and knows someone will be waiting for her. Despite that, he gives her an explosive surprise, which she then returns using a propane tank. I think King Kill would be pretty proud of that kill. Outside, we take a look at the parade float and find key items missing from it. Saga re-enters Coffee World and removes 4 more taken from this plane of existence, and grabs the necessary items to add some flair to the float and open the overlap. Like the previous overlap, we need to wander the loop thrice in order to reach the end. The first loop is peaceful, albeit a little creepy. The second loop bumps my kill total up to 69. Time to stop the game here, folks. It's over. We've achieved perfection. Okay, I'm back for the third loop, and this is where it takes a turn. Saga's shoes are getting ruined with the blood all over, and the shore contains 4 floating bodies. Saga follows the path to the well, and this time Deputy Mulligan climbs out right into my flare and is immediately killed off. But the dark presence will not let it be that simple, because Mulligan and Thornton can be killed many times and keep climbing out of that well. I end second Mulligan before I wipe out the dark spots littered around the arena. Once they're gone, the 2 taken become susceptible to permadeath, and Saga screams no more mulligans to end him for good, and Thornton soon follows for being a sniping little asshole. After that's finished, Saga and Wake come face to face again, with Wake admitting he's been tricked by Scratch. She's confused, considering she left him with Casey in the field office, and asks why he wrote her family into the story. But the meeting ends there, and Saga peers down at her hand to find she has the clicker. With the object of power in hand, she calls Casey but doesn't get an answer, then calls her husband again with the same result. So she heads back to Watery now that the flooding has receded, and I switch to Alan Wake. He realizes the dark presence attacked him and prevented him from escaping. He sits down at his desk and starts a new draft of Initiation, which begins one of the most memorable and incredible sequences in any game in 2023. We start at the talk show again, but this time Mr. Door introduces a new musical titled Herald of Darkness. Alan enters the TV and the rock opera starts, with Poets of the Fall returning to collaborate with Remedy on music for the game. What they did in Alan Wake 1 was awesome, but holy shit, did they take things to a whole other level posing as Thor and Odin and the old gods of Asgard. Herald of Darkness has been stuck in my head since the fucking Game Awards, and this entire sequence was just so fun to play, look at, and listen to. If you take your time, the characters on the screen will gently point you in the right direction, which happened often for me as I took my sweet ass time with it. I mean, come on, we get to watch Sam Lake dance alongside everyone here. Eventually, as the scene progresses, Wake obtains the kick-ass flare gun and really racks up the kills here, adding 21 taken to the count and getting the total real close to triple digits. Unfortunately, all great things come to an end and the musical comes to a close.
Such a dark place, am I trapped in here?
Oh wait, fuck yeah, we get round 2! This time, Wake gets a solo number, but it doesn't last long, and it for real comes to an end here. But our boy Ati is there singing it as well, and if a supernatural entity can't get a tune out of their head, you know it's a certified banger. Outside the studio, Wake answers the payphone again. This time, the voice shows some surprise because Wake remembers talking to him this time. He asks Wake to drop by the Ocean View Hotel, but the building wants to make things difficult for us by ejecting us right back onto the streets. To find a way forward, we need to follow the neon sign. residence, but Wake's creation is waiting in the alley again, this time more aggro than he was previously. In a panic, Wake shoots Casey, adding him onto the kill count for the second time. On Wake's search for the hotel, he's able to bump the total count over 100 while finding a shotgun to add to his arsenal. He punches the code to the hotel into the keypad, and within the hotel he finds the man that has been calling him. He turns around, and right away we know why the voice sounded familiar, because Thomas Zane bears a twinning resemblance to Alan. He asks Wake to collaborate with him. He'll write the book, and Zane will make the movie to form their magnum opus. But first, they need some inspiration. Afterwards, Zane tells Wake he can find a murder site within the hotel where he can alter the story, but the TV suddenly clicks on and Jesse Faden's face can be seen briefly. Zane hates redheads though and crawls away in fear. The hotel level has Wake following in Casey's footsteps as he'd investigated the murders at the hotel. He questions the director of an immersive play that took place within the supposedly haunted hotel. Rumors are, a cult once summoned something evil in the ballroom, and remarks on how they may have summoned the same entity. They got a mystery actor to play the devil who went real Jared Leto with the role, never taking the mask off, never talking with his co-stars, and staying in room 666. Throughout the investigation, Wake removes 13 taken from the hotel so he can edit his story in peace. While changing the plot elements on the fly, several dead bodies appear throughout the hotel. 43 bodies in all were found splayed out within the ballroom, the hallways, stairwell, and right outside of room 666. Upon entering the devil's room, Wake comments that his scratch senses are tingling. Another echo of Casey's questioning reveals a woman was murdered in room 108 and was the only reason the person that played the devil joined the play. But then the dark presence arrives to give chase again, this time catching me from behind. I escape it the second time around and locate room 108 to find the dead woman in the bathtub. Even in death, she's body shy and dips out so Wake can't catch a peek. In her stead is Saga, who informs Wake she has the clicker. This is good news, so she can now deliver it to him. But as usual, communication is hard here and she does what the bathtub lady did. Loaded with a new plotline, Wake is ready to get back to Parliament Tower and resume his edits to return. As Saga drives back to Bright Falls, we get an outside shot of the lodge as Casey tells Wake the manuscript pages creep him out because it feels like he's being watched. Perhaps that feeling comes from the incoming cult, who begin attacking the lodge and demanding they hand over Wake. As Casey gets his max pain on, Wake can sense Scratch nearby, which causes a mean migraine to kick in. Wake passes out for a minute to find dead bodies everywhere. I counted 8 cultists and 1 lodge employee as Wake made his way through the blood-drenched building. He finds a flashlight and a shotgun by one of the bodies and uses that to protect himself against incoming taken. Wake follows the sounds of violence where 3 more cultist bodies are found, presumably taken out by Casey. But again, Wake's head incapacitates him as we get a brief glimpse of Casey being stalked by Scratch. Wake himself nearly becomes a number on the count until Saga arrives and shoots at the cultist that was mere seconds from stabbing him. It's revealed that Emo Koskela is not just part of the cult but one of its leaders. Saga isn't able to process this new information because Agent Kieran Estevez and her whole ass crew from the FBC show up to take over the case from the FBI. Saga isn't about to let that stop her though, so as the FBC gathers all the evidence and heads back to the sheriff's station, Saga keeps the clicker hidden and she sets her sights on the nursing home to get some answers from Tor and Odin. On the way over there, Saga gets a bit of hunting done inside the woods and eventually emerges on the other side and rings the doorbell to the Valhalla nursing home. Rose answers, who seems hesitant to let Saga come in and claims Tor and Odin aren't seeing visitors. Thinking on her toes, Saga asks to come in anyway and say hi to the other residents instead. She judges the shit out of Rose for her Alan Wake shrine and catches a plaque that shows Wake's agent Barry was the one that got this home set up. As Saga explores the home, I wonder why it's so dark when Rose knows damn well this bitch should be lit up like the Griswold house on Christmas. I note that Auntie likes to chill here and talk to a couple of the residents, learning that Tor apparently hurt himself and is inside the wellness center and Odin is sleeping upstairs. I talk with Rose, who makes the mistake of bringing up Logan again, which just pisses Saga off. Melanie Liebert plays Saga Anderson, who had never acted in a video game before this. Remedy chose to bring in a brand new character in large part due to the 13-year gap between game 1 and 2. They wanted a fresh perspective from a new character who is piecing together everything alongside any new players of the franchise. I appreciated playing as both Alan and Saga, but this old lady is less of a fan.
Excuse me, miss.
but you don't see me barging into your room while you're performing mental and physical strengthening exercises, do you?
Upstairs, Saga tries talking to Odin, but he's unresponsive, so she goes into her mind place where she gets a nice surprise. Odin is able to talk to her there and informs Saga that Tor is in danger in the wellness center. He's been marked by darkness and may soon become taken. Odin advises her to beware of Cynthia Weaver, a familiar name from the first game and someone who was once a champion of light. Odin confirms the clicker has the power to change the story, but she needs to save Tor first. On her way out, an old woman mumbling to herself catches Saga's attention. She provides a jump scare and pieces out, making Saga realize an overlap is close by. On my way out, I examine a door with a spiral on it and get another jump scare from our friendly neighborhood janitor, who informs Saga it's closed for safety reasons. That seems sus, but I have other matters to attend to. Saga confronts Rose and flashes her FBI badge, saying that lets her go to the wellness center right now, and Rose reluctantly unlocks the way there and warns her to stay away from the puddles. I'm way more interested in what's in the dispensary though. Inside, we can hear yelling and banging with signs of Tor's old man strength leaving a trail to him. The door's locked behind him though, forcing Saga to take a side route to unlock it while obtaining a hunting rifle in the process, and a new type of taken called a diver. She follows Tor through the doors and hears Rose yelling at him to stop bathing in the dirty water, and they both watch as he waltzes right into the overlap. Despite witnessing what just happened, Rose continues to lie to Saga's face when she claims Tor's still in the wellness center. It takes a good old-fashioned profiling to discover Rose will only reveal information to the hero of Wake's story, who must say the words,
"Wake has returned."
The energy suddenly changes and Rose is about to shit her pants in excitement. She hands over her keys and a manuscript page that lets us know we can open the overlap using an old Gods of Asgard record that was stolen by Cynthia Weaver, who Rose verifies was consumed by darkness. Even though we don't know when it happened, since Cynthia was an important character in the first game, I'm going to count her death here. Inside the nursing home is a mini museum dedicated to the old Gods of Asgard, but the record is missing. So we enter the mind place to discover the record is being kept in Cynthia's room, and Odin chimes in to tell Saga Cynthia has seduced Tor and he desperately needs her help. But right as she attempts to badge into her room, the power goes out and Ahti lets us know the generator is in the basement. 3 Taken try to prevent her entry, but their head is no match for our newfound rifle. In the basement, Saga uncovers the body of one Vladimir Blum, the man she talked to briefly in Watery. He took a knife to the dome, and that's all the details we get on his death. After turning on the generator, we head back up to Cynthia's room that provides some insight into her final days before becoming taken. She lost the angel lamp and could no longer protect herself from the darkness. But enough of that shit, let's grab the record and get to killing this old lady. Another diver awaits Saga on the main floor and it dives directly into the kill count. I insert the record into the jukebox and watch as the overlap opens up outside. As is tradition, we need to navigate the loop 3 times before we can move forward and add 2 additional taken along the way. Saga emerges into a large flooded room and can hear Tor's distant pleas for help, but she's unable to turn the lights on without the power. This starts a sequence similar to the infamous water sections in Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and it's equally as butthole clenching. After lots of poop and sweat have been lost, the generator is activated and the lights come on. But down below is still quite dark, and that's where Cynthia Weaver awaits us. This fight took me about 5 minutes to get through, and that's because this little old lady would bum rush me and start throwing hands like a crackhead. It had me running around in a panic more often than not, but she eventually takes her last shotgun shell and dies. As usual, Wake appears, and Saga believes she's watching a version of him before he was able to escape, and soon after she finds herself outside of the nursing home.
Hey, took you sweet time to come save your grandpa, huh?
They enter the mind place together, so the dark can't listen in, and Tor gives his granddaughter a little family history. He explains the Andersons are all seers, which is where this ability comes from. He apologizes because he was a terrible father, and since her mom Freya is gone, he can only make it up to Saga now. She takes this moment to ask about her dad, who she never knew, and while Tor doesn't provide much detail, he does say he was a complicated man, and his disappearance led to the fracture between Freya and Tor. After that bonding moment is finished, Saga informs her grandpappy she's going to find Wake so they can use the clicker and set things right. He tells her he and Odin will be on standby if they're needed. Fast forward a little bit and Saga gets to the police station to find the power is out and Agent Estevez is hiding in the closet. They were attacked by some Taken and are in dire need of some assistance. I quickly handle the big boy in the office and take note of the dead cop and dead FBC agent in the hallway. After speaking with Estevez, she admits they were ambushed and couldn't fight back. She inquires where Wake is being held, and Estevez remarks on how Wake is a para-utilitarian, like she should know what that is, but us familiar with Control know that's the classification given to those that wield supernatural powers. Estevez says Wake is being kept in the holding cells, but the door is locked until the power in the basement is turned back on. Saga follows up with questions about her partner, who was attacked by a shadow and has been showing early signs of becoming taken. Last she saw Casey was down in the morgue, giving us 2 reasons to traverse into the basement again. Before leaving, we have to ask what the FBC is doing here. Estevez admits that Bright Falls is the location of an AWE, an Altered World event, but this was a lot stronger than anticipated. The FBC is having troubles at HQ, so no backup will be coming. This may give us a little peek into what is coming in Control 2, as it sounds like HQ is dealing with yet another problem. But let's focus on the one we have here and start by upgrading our shotgun. I count another 2 cops and 4 FBC agents downstairs, and watch as Casey eliminates a Taken from the same room Nightingale returned in. Saga updates Casey on what she dealt with in Watery and the nursing home, but Casey shows signs that the ever-changing story is impacting him too when he reminds Saga that Logan drowned years ago. He hands a fuse over and Saga puts it back in place to bring the lights back on. And right then, Estevez radios in to warn Saga of some incoming Taken that are so kind as to push the kill count north of 200. I talk briefly with Estevez again and learn the Koskela brothers are also being held in the cells, and that they have some equipment set up in the parking lot out back that will help them fight the dark presence. The Koskelas are quick to get aggro when Saga shows up and they demand to be let out, but she ignores them and beelines it to Wake to scold him for including Logan in his story. Wake says fuck her kid and confirms she has the clicker instead. Saga goes to hand it over until the Koskelas yell at her to not give it to him, and Wake reveals himself to be Scratch. He makes an example of Yako Koskela and one-shots him before turning his attention towards Saga. I book it outside and utilize the FBC's equipment they so conveniently set up for this specific encounter. The sound design team and composer Petri Alanko detail the work they put in to make the game as unsettling as possible. The environments certainly help with that, but the biggest reason I felt on edge for most of the game was due to the amazing work they did with the sound. They used all kinds of strange instruments and paired them with unique methods to create interesting sounds, like submerging this shit in water. When the dark presence is near, the accompanying sounds are terrifying and hectic, and that's no different during this Scratch confrontation. I have to turn on 3 different power cords that are able to eliminate him for the time being, but not for good. Afterwards, Saga discusses what's next with Casey and Estevez in the station and gets deputized into the FBC. She's given some hope regarding her daughters. Estevez explains that AWEs tend to be localized, so once it's contained, she'll find her child safe. Saga offers her sympathies to Ilmo and discovers the cult of the tree was actually trying to keep the town safe by killing Taken. They believe Alan Wake to be the cause of all this and wanted to end things by taking his life as well. She then dips into her mind place again to talk to her peepaw on how to save Wake from the dark place. He says she needs to use art for Cauldron Lake to make that a reality. She asks Estevez and Casey to take the equipment to the lake and meet her there. Luckily for us, they're in possession of a containment unit specifically made for strong entities such as Scratch. Saga calls Tor to request the old gods of Asgard perform a song at the lake that's about Wake escaping the dark place. Tor says fuck yeah, and they'll meet her there. The drive there is a sad one for Saga, when her husband finally answers the phone and blames her for Logan's death and to never call him again. With the extra motivation to get this done, Saga arrives at the lake just in time to watch the equipment get delivered. Thankfully, the dark presence seems to be bored of using birds to do its bidding. I slowly make my way through the dark forest, and as I do, Saga's crazy relatives show up and drive their vehicle through the forest itself. And between my own shooting and Odin's crazy driving, 13 Taken are killed and added to the count. When Saga gets to the shore of the lake, she finds everything all set up and asks they give her the signal when the song is finished so she can use the clicker. Tor and Odin start Dark Ocean Summoning, another kick-ass song that highlights an action-packed sequence. I have to point out that canonically, these old guys wrote this song almost immediately upon request, and it fucking rules. I died twice here due to the sheer amount of Taken invading the beach, but using the law of 3, I succeed the 3rd time around and kill 12 Taken with the shotgun and 2 with the rifle, before the old gods of Asgard eliminate 9 more with the sheer power of rock and roll. Saga uses the clicker and we transition to Wake at Parliament Tower. Inside, we see photos proving Scratch was tormenting Alice in Alan's absence, and some emails show that his old agent Barry was keeping in touch with Alice as he fought to ensure Alan's novels were respected by Hollywood's attempts to adapt them. A 4-part series of of videos shows Alice worked hard to reveal what lies in the darkness, and found out there's an entire world beyond ours. Wake interacts with her work and finds himself in the writer's room again, and sits down to write Saga in as the hero who fights the darkness. But when he looks up, he sees what appears to be himself, or Scratch, standing in the doorway. He rushes in and ends the chapter with a gunshot and an unexpected kill. Alan wakes up claiming Scratch stopped him before he could finish the story. Memories of his edits are already fading, so he decides he needs to meet up with Zane again and begin another draft. But since we're at the beginning, Wake has to find a way out of the studio, and this time is much different than any others. Warland Dorr is there alone, and the curtain has come down on the talk show. He informs Wake the talk show is only an indulgence meant to placate Wake, who apparently likes to make things difficult for himself. He blames Wake for pulling someone very important to him into the story, and warns him if he doesn't play his part, their next meeting will be very different. Wake's next meeting with Ati is as strange and confusing as usual, but he points him towards the basement where a shoebox of Alice's photos awaits him. The box contains 2 photos, one of the clicker and one showing a bullet made of light. I'm attacked by a Taken for another kill and run my ass to the hotel to find Zane. In his place, we find a camera and interact with it to find ourselves in a film with Wake pointing a gun at Zane. What follows is a back and forth between the lookalikes that results in Wake shooting Zane in the head and taking a ticket from his pocket that will grant him access to another murder site. But we aren't counting Zane as a kill here, because once Wake is bounced out of the film, we confirm he's not dead and simply acting. I exit the hotel and traverse the shadow-filled streets to locate the cinema, but I die before I can get there. I fight the 2 Taken that await me in the garage, where Tim Breaker is also hiding out. Since he's adamant that Dorr is the reason he's here, Wake asks what he knows about him. He admits not much, but he moved to Bright Falls since Sarah Breaker recognized the sketch he drew based on his constant dreams surrounding the man. There's an old case file from the 80s that states Warland Dorr went missing around Cauldron Lake after he was struck by lightning. Wake leaves Breaker to his own devices, and once inside the cinema, we listen to an echo of Casey discussing Thomas Zane, who went missing after making just 1 movie. However, he reportedly made a second movie that was rumored to be a snuff film the cult is in search of. I make this a snuff game by getting another 4 kills. I use the lamp to take the light out of the silver screen and reveal a door that leads me into an alley. An echo outside shows a couple guys pondering what their initiation into the cult will be, given they've been disposing of bodies through a chute. We're not sure how many bodies they disposed of, so I'm not going to count anybody here. I run into Breaker again, and this time his whiteboard has an interesting note about a red-headed woman. Further along, another echo shows that Casey is getting closer to solving his case and nearing the Grand Master of the cult, while Wake is being attacked by a Taken, and using the various plot elements to change the environment around him. Back inside the cinema, Wake enters a theater screen door that transports him into a loop that shows the actor that plays Alex Casey in a deer mask begging Wake not to stab him. He's able to break free from his restraints and run away from Wake before getting stabbed. While following him, we happen upon the final echo containing Casey, who has reached the end of the road in this case, as a cultist thanks him for playing his role perfectly, and then welcoming Alan Wake directly. In the room beyond, we locate the bodies of deputies Mulligan and Thornton, who were already counted when we learned that they were consumed by the darkness, and whose initiation looked to be a painful one. Saga appears briefly here and they converse. Wake says he wrote her in as the hero and that he needs to get to Parliament Tower to make the necessary edits. Outside the tower, we answer the payphone and Wake tells himself he needs to place Alice's photos in the shoebox outside the tower. Once they're in there, the tower opens and inside his apartment contains a door with a spiral that Wake comments on, saying he can hear Scratch in there as he writes. But it's hard to pass up watching another video of his wife, who he sorely misses. She's obviously having a tough time with the constant harassment from Scratch. She ends the clip by saying the artist must become the art, and it wraps up with her dropping into the lake and a message claiming she's gone. Wake's anger rises and he busts into the writer's room and gets a headshot on himself, which puts him on the other end of the scene that ended his last run. He comes to the realization he keeps fucking himself over, and the dark presence sneaks up and tickles his brain until he fully disappears. We cut back to Saga in the middle of a realization that the clicker did bring Wake back, but not at this point in time. It brought him back right after the confrontation with Nightingale, and that Wake and Scratch are one and the same. Upon that revelation, Scratch wrecks Saga for death number 10, and when I reload, I lead him along for several minutes, stunning him in order to gain enough time to point the lights at the containment unit. Saga traps herself inside in order to lure Scratch in there too, but it fails, and he's able to escape and transfer to Agent Casey instead. He snatches the clicker from Saga and yeets her into the lake before apparating to the middle of Bright Falls and pressing the clicker. With that over, we take control of normal Wake again, as the Anderson elders wander into the lake in search of Saga. During a brief chat with Estevez, she comments on the remarkable strength of Scratch that's unlike anything else she's encountered. Wake intends to find him and Scratch's manuscript so he can rewrite his ending. The trek through the woods throws 12 taken at Wake before he finds Saga's car and jacks it for a ride into town. In the middle of town sits an overlap that Wake walks into that shows us a bright and sunny Bright Falls for once. The street is littered with people commending the new novel, but Wake thinks the ending is horse shit, which sends the crowd into a killing frenzy. I outrun them the next time around, and since they're too stupid to break windows, I saunter my ass over to the wellness center that includes another chase from the Dark Presence. Once on the other side, Rose hurries Wake inside the nursing home. Ati greets us upstairs and grants access to the Spiral Room, which contains a real-world writer's room specifically for Wake. The echo inside shows a conversation between our two protagonists agreeing that the story's hero must pay a heavy price, as long as Saga's family is not harmed though. Then we switch over to Saga, who finds herself in her mind place, but this one is different. This entire sequence has Saga's self-doubts and insecurities try and drive her into an emotional spiral that will make her give up, but she refuses to allow that to happen and takes control. She then wakes up in the plaza and talks to a woman on the phone. It tells Saga to grab the items in the shoebox outside of Parliament Tower. She then hears humming and finds our pal Tim Breaker laxing on a park bench. She asks how to find Parliament Tower, and Tim hands over a page that contains instructions written by Warland Dorr. She takes a profiling break to find out more about Mr. Dorr, who claims the Dorr family can shift between realities. While it's not explicitly said, there are strong indications that Dorr is Saga's missing father. It's all in this line Dorr muttered to Wake earlier.
And so is someone important to me, someone you pulled into this.
I mean, Tor did say he's a complicated man after all. Following the directions, Saga finds her way to the tower and pulls the clicker and a bullet of light from the shoebox. The payphone rings again and the woman, who we now know is Alice Wake, tells Saga that Alan needs her help to write the ending. Using some of that Anderson family power, Saga contacts Wake using her mind place, and they parse out the details on the edits that must be made to Scratch's story. Saga says they are both heroes of the story and that he needs to include something dramatic with a high price to be paid in order to finish things properly. Saga finishes a take-in while she sets out to return the clicker to Wake. Scratch Casey arrives right after her, and Saga hits the clicker, which releases the Dark Presence from her partner so it can go back home to Wake. Saga whips around and sends that bullet of light straight into the forehead of the titular character. Now, this is where things get a bit weird. Well, weirder. This is not the true ending. That comes when you play New Game Plus, which I didn't do to be honest. So courtesy of YouTube user ManuGames92's clip, we can see that Wake himself survived the gunshot, but Scratch is finally killed and releases Alan from the endless loop. Right after Wake is shot, Saga calls up Logan, and before it connects, the game cuts to credits. But in the true ending, Logan answers the phone. A post-credit scene also shows Alice is still alive, and instead faked her own death after getting in touch with the FBC, and finally remembering and understanding what it is she went through in Bright Falls. She entered the dark place in order to assist Wake with getting out. The final scene shows Wake coming to and uttering these words.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
But that's the 9 Inch Nails ending. The true ending has Wake claiming quite ominously that he is a master of many worlds. The game ends there, but 2 DLCs have already been confirmed for 2024 before the Remedyverse continues on in Control 2. But for now, let's spiral into the final numbers. I finished Alan Wake 2 with a total of 262 kills, with 48% of those being done outside of the player's control. That means only 137 of those came from the player directly, which is wild for the length of the game. I favor the shotgun with both characters and tallied up 40% of my kills using it. I died a total of 11 times, with Taken being responsible for 6 of those. It took me 19 hours and 56 minutes to finish Alan Wake 2, which gives us a kill on average every 4.56 minutes and a death every 108.72 minutes. The only other game I've played that has a lower kill average is the Resident Evil 1 remake. Alan Wake 2 was my personal game of the year for 2023, but as of recording, I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3 yet, so that might change. But Remedy games just hit different, and Alan Wake is something special. I eagerly await Control 2 to see how they expand on everything. Thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.